Over 6 centuries. It sounds simple when you say it, but living through those 600 years was anything but simple. Just think about it. 600 years of constant change, struggle, triumphs, and failures. Imagine an empire that faced not just battles with neighboring kingdoms, but also endless internal conflicts, revolts, and crises, and yet somehow managed to survive, adapt, and even thrive for centuries. When we look back today and casually say, the Ottoman Empire achieved this, or failed at that, we often forget the sheer complexity of daily life for the people who lived through it. Life wasn't just about sultans and armies. It was about ordinary men and women trying to survive, make a living, dream, and even enjoy small moments of happiness amid chaos. The Ottoman Empire didn't appear out of nowhere. It started small, a modest principality on the edge of the Byzantine world, and grew step by step into one of the most influential empires in history. But growth wasn't a straight line. It was full of twists, surprises, and sudden turns. Imagine leaders waking up one day to news that a neighboring region had revolted, or that a distant European kingdom was sending armies to invade. Sometimes opportunities appeared almost out of nowhere, like a trade route suddenly opening or a key alliance forming. Other times, disaster struck without warning: famine, disease, uprisings, or crushing defeats. Over 600 years, you can imagine how much happened. It was like living on a roller coaster, but one that stretched for centuries. There were moments when the empire expanded so quickly that even its own leaders struggled to keep up. New lands meant new cultures, new laws, and new responsibilities. And there were moments when the empire contracted, losing territories and facing humiliation. Some decades were so grim that surviving to the next 10 years felt like a miracle. But somehow, time and again, the empire pulled itself together. That resilience, the ability to bounce back after disaster, became one of its defining traits. It wasn't just about military strength. It was about persistence, creativity, and a kind of stubborn optimism. Think about the geography under Ottoman control: rugged Balkan mountains, scorching deserts of the Middle East, the icy winds of the Caucasus, and the buzzing, crowded cities of Europe. Governing such a vast and diverse empire wasn't easy. Every region had its own language, religion, customs, and conflicts. Yet somehow, through a mix of clever administration, diplomacy, and sometimes force, the Ottomans kept this patchwork of peoples together. In some places, local leaders were allowed to maintain their traditions. In others, reforms were introduced to bring distant provinces closer to the center. It was a balancing act that required intelligence, patience, and sometimes sheer luck. Meanwhile, the world outside the empire kept changing. Europe was moving into new eras of science, discovery, and industrialization. Ideas traveled faster, inventions transformed daily life, and societies began modernizing rapidly. The Ottoman Empire, which had once been at the center of global power, suddenly found itself struggling to adapt. Old systems that had worked for centuries began to feel outdated. Internal problems grew more pressing, and external pressures increased. There were times when the state felt like a giant gasping for air, trying to survive in a world that was moving at lightning speed. Yet the people living under Ottoman rule showed incredible endurance. Soldiers fought until the very last moment, often far from home. Scholars continued to teach, write, and preserve knowledge. Merchants kept trading, connecting cities and continents. Artists filled urban life with music, poetry, and beauty. Ordinary people, farmers, laborers, mothers, fathers, simply kept living, feeding their families, building homes, and holding on to hope. In doing all this, often without realizing it, they carried the empire forward. Life didn't stop because the empire faced a crisis. People found ways to keep going, and in those small actions, the empire's survival depended. Wars came and went, sometimes ending in treaties, sometimes exploding again almost immediately. Borders expanded, contracted, and shifted constantly. But through it all, one principle persisted: keep moving forward. This stubborn determination, this refusal to give up, helped the empire last for 6 centuries. And it wasn't just about political strategy. It was about a collective mindset, a shared understanding that life goes on no matter how difficult things get. And here's an interesting truth about history. Even the greatest empires eventually fade. Nothing lasts forever. The Ottoman Empire had its rise, its golden age. periods of stagnation, moments of weakness, and finally its end. But what it left behind, that's what truly matters. Walk through any city that once belonged to the empire, and you'll see it everywhere. A mosque adorned with centuries-old patterns, a stone fountain still running with water, a bridge that has watched countless people cross for hundreds of years. These are silent witnesses to the past. You don't need a history book to feel history. Sometimes all you need is to look around and notice the world your ancestors once lived in. The empire left deep, lasting marks on countless nations. From the Balkans to the Middle East, people lived under Ottoman rule for generations. Languages absorbed new words, cuisines gained new flavors, cities developed unique architectures, cultures mixed, clashed and influenced each other. Some memories are beautiful, filled with music, trade, coexistence, and art. Others are painful, marked by conflict, rebellion, and loss. But together they form a shared story. A story that still shapes millions of lives today. To truly love history is to understand this complexity. You can't go back in time, but you can try to imagine life as it was. You can picture what people feared, hoped for, and worked toward. You can try to see the world through their eyes. By understanding their struggles and dreams, you start to see your own past, and even your present more clearly. The story of the Ottoman Empire isn't just about sultans, battles, or politics. It's the story of everyone who lived under its roof. Farmers tending the soil, mothers raising children, craftsmen building homes and markets, teachers sharing knowledge, travelers bringing news from afar. Their choices, their efforts, their hardships, all of it contributed to the empire's history. Even the smallest actions mattered. And perhaps the most remarkable thing is that few empires in history managed to hold so many cultures together for so long. That alone is extraordinary. It shows a mix of tolerance, strength, strategy, adaptation, and sometimes simple necessity. The Ottomans didn't just conquer lands. They maintained a fragile balance between unity and diversity, often against overwhelming odds. History reminds us of one crucial lesson. No empire lasts forever. But the traces they leave, the languages, the stories, the buildings, the music, the traditions, often endure long after the empires themselves are gone. The Ottoman Empire didn't just leave a trace. It left an entire cultural landscape spanning 3 continents: streets, marketplaces, religious institutions, and local customs. They all carry echoes of centuries gone by. And that is why people still talk about it today. Historians study it. Artists get inspired by it. Families tell stories about ancestors. Nations feel its influence in language, food, architecture, and politics. The empire's story continues through countless small living remnants. Great stories endure. And the story of a people who fought, survived, adapted, and carried on for 600 years is a story that refuses to disappear. It continues, in memories, in monuments, in traditions, and in the curiosity of anyone who asks, how did it all happen? Because history isn't just about dates or battles. It's about people, ordinary people who lived extraordinary lives. It's about the way communities survive, grow, and leave something behind. And the Ottoman Empire, with all its complexity, contradictions, and achievements, reminds us that resilience, adaptation, and determination are timeless lessons. So next time you walk past an old fountain, mosque, bridge, or street, pause for a moment. Think about the hundreds of years that passed there. Think about the people who lived, laughed, struggled, and dreamed. Those tiny traces, sometimes overlooked, are the heartbeats of history. They tell us stories no book alone can capture. Subscribe to the channel. Because history, when shared, doesn't just belong to the past. It lives with us, guiding us, inspiring us, and connecting us to the countless lives that came before.